In the beginning, Elohim created the heaven and the earth. Genesis chapter 1 verse 1. Elohim, translated without justification in some Bibles by the word God, means in Hebrew, those who came from the sky, and furthermore the word is a plural. It means that the scientists from our world searched for a planet that was suitable to carry out their projects. They created, or in reality discovered the Earth, and realized it contained all the necessary elements for the creation of artificial life, even if its atmosphere was not quite the same as our own. And the spirit of Elohim moved upon the face of the waters. Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. This means the scientists made reconnaissance flights, and what you might call artificial satellites were placed around the Earth to study its constitution and atmosphere. The Earth was, at that time, completely covered with water and thick mist. And Elohim saw the light, that it was good. Genesis chapter 1 verse 4. To create life on Earth, it was important to know whether the sun was sending harmful rays to the Earth's surface, and this question was fully researched. It turned out that the sun was heating the Earth correctly without sending out harmful rays. In other words, the light was good. And the evening and the morning were the first day. Genesis chapter 1 verse 5. This research took quite some time. The day mentioned here corresponds to the period in which your sun rises under the same sign on the day of the vernal equinox, in other words, about 2,000 years on Earth. And Elohim made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. Genesis chapter 1 verse 7. After studying the cosmic rays above the clouds, the scientists descended below the clouds but stayed above the waters. That means they were between the clouds, the waters which were above the firmament, and the ocean covering the whole planet, the waters which were under the firmament. Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. Genesis chapter 1 verse 9. After they studied the surface of the ocean, they studied the seabed and determined that it was not very deep and fairly even everywhere, so then, by means of fairly strong explosions, which acted rather like bulldozers, they raised matter from the bottom of the seas and piled it up into one place to form a continent. Originally there was on Earth only one continent, and your scientists have recently acknowledged that all the continents, which have drifted apart over many years, used to fit perfectly into one another to form one landmass. Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself, upon the earth. Genesis chapter 1 verse 11. In this magnificent and gigantic laboratory, they created vegetable cells from nothing other than chemicals, which then produced various types of plants. All their efforts were aimed at reproduction. The few blades of grass they created had to reproduce on their own. The scientists spread out across this immense continent in small research teams. Every individual created different varieties of plants according to their inspiration and the climate. They met up at regular intervals to compare their research and their creations. The people back on their own planet followed their progress from afar with passion and amazement. The most brilliant artists came and joined the scientists in order to give some plants purely decorative and pleasing roles, either through their appearance or their perfume. Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs, and for seasons, and for days, and years. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14. By observing the stars and the sun they could measure the duration of the days, the months and the years on Earth. This helped them regulate their life on the new planet, so different from their own where days and years did not have the same duration. Research in astronomy enabled them to locate themselves precisely and to understand the Earth better. Let the waters abound with an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the face of the firmament of the heavens. Genesis chapter 1 verse 20. Next they created the first aquatic animals, from plankton to small fish, then very large fish. They also created seaweed to balance this little world, so that the small fish could feed on it and the bigger fish could eat the small fish in turn, thus a natural balance would be established, and one species would not destroy another species in order to survive. This is what you now refer to as ecology, and that was achieved successfully. The scientists and artists met often and organized competitions to determine which team had created the most beautiful or most interesting animals. After the fish they created birds. This was done under pressure, it must be said, from the artists, who went out of their way to create the most stunning forms with the craziest colors. Some of them had great trouble flying because their beautiful feathers were very cumbersome. The contests went even further, embracing not only physical characteristics but also the behavior of these animals, particularly the wonderful dances of their mating rituals. Some other groups of scientists created frightful animals, veritable monsters, which proved right those people who had opposed the creation plans on their own planet. These were dragons, or what you call dinosaurs and brontosaurs. Let the earth bring forth the living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind. Genesis chapter 1 verse 24. After marine organisms and birds, the scientists created land animals on a planet where the vegetation had by now become magnificent. There was plenty of food for the herbivores. These were the first land animals which were created. Later they created carnivores to balance the herbivorous population. Here too, the species had to maintain equilibrium. Those scientists who did all this came from the same planet as me. I am one of those people who created life on Earth. It was at that time that the most skillful among us wanted to create an artificial human being like ourselves. Each team set to work, and very soon we were able to compare our creations. But on our home planet people were outraged when they heard that we were making test tube children who might come to threaten their world. They feared that these new human beings could become a danger if their mental capacities or powers turned out to be superior to those of their creators. So we had to agree to leave the new humans to live in a very primitive way without letting them know anything scientific, and we mystified our actions. It is easy to work out how many teams of creators did this. Each race on Earth corresponds to a team of creators. Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Genesis chapter 1 verse 26. In our image, you can see that the resemblance is striking. That is when the trouble started for us. The team located in the country you now call Israel, which at the time was not far from Greece and Turkey on the original continent, was composed of brilliant creators who were perhaps the most talented team of all. Their animals were the most beautiful and their plants had the sweetest perfumes. This was what you call paradise on earth. The human beings they created there were the most intelligent. So stepshod to be taken to ensure that they did not surpass their creators. The created, therefore, had to be kept in ignorance of the great scientific secrets while being educated for the purpose of measuring their intelligence. Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. Genesis chapter 2 verses 16 to 17. This means you, the created, can learn all you want, read all of the books that we have here at your disposal, but never touch the scientific books, otherwise you will die. He brought them to the man to see what he would name them. Genesis chapter 2 verse 19. Human beings had to have a thorough understanding of the plants and animals living around them, their way of life, and the way to get food from them. The creators taught them the names and the powers of everything that existed around them, since botany and zoology were not considered dangerous for them. Imagine the joy of this team of scientists, having two children, a male and a female, running around, eagerly learning what was being taught to them. The serpent said unto the woman, Of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, ye shall not surely die, for Elohim doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be like Elohim. Genesis chapter 3 verses 1 to 5. Some scientists in this team felt a deep love for their little human beings, their creatures, and they wanted to give them a complete education in order to make them scientists like themselves. So they told these young people who were almost adults that they could pursue their scientific studies, and in so doing they would become as knowledgeable as their creators. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. Genesis chapter 3 verse 7. The new human beings then understood that they could also become creators in their turn, and they became angry at their parents for having kept them away from scientific books, considering them to be like dangerous laboratory animals. And Yahweh, Elohim, said unto the serpent, Because thou hast done this, thou art cursed, upon thy belly shalt thou go, and dust shalt thou eat all the days of thy life. Genesis chapter 3 verse 14. The serpent was this small group of creators who had wished total the truth to Adam and Eve, and as a result they were condemned by the government of their own planet to live in exile on Earth, while all the other scientists had to put a stop to their experiments and leave the Earth. Unto Adam also and to his wife did Yahweh Elohim make coats of skins, and clothe them. Genesis chapter 3 verse 21. The creators gave their creations the basic means of survival, enough to manage without needing any further contact with them. The Bible has preserved a sentence, which is close to the original document. Behold, the man is become as one of us, to know good and evil. And now, lest he put forth his hand, and take also of the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Genesis chapter 3 verse 22. Human life is very short, but there is a scientific way to prolong it. Human scientists who study all their lives can only begin to amass sufficient knowledge to start making interesting discoveries when they get old, which is the reason why human progress is so slow. If humans could live 10 times longer, scientific knowledge would take a gigantic leap forward. If when they were first created these new beings could have lived much longer, they would have quite rapidly become our equals because their mental faculties are slightly superior to our own. They are unaware of their full potential. This applies especially to the people of Israel who, as I mentioned earlier, had been selected in a contest as the most successful type of humanoid on Earth due to their intelligence and genius. This explains why they have always considered themselves to be the chosen people. In truth, they were the people chosen by the teams of scientists who gathered together to judge their creations. You can see for yourself the number of geniuses born out of that race. So he drove out the man, and he placed at the east of the Garden of Eden cherubims, and a flaming sword which turned every way, to keep the way of the tree of life. Genesis chapter 3 verse 24. Soldiers with atomic disintegration weapons were placed at the entrance to the Creator's residence to prevent human beings from stealing more scientific knowledge.